I used to do lots of odd jobs for people, and years ago I got a call from some old guy asking if I could come and clean out his basement. I thought it sounded like a good little afternoon gig, and I could put a few bucks in my pockets, so why not? I checked the map and saw that this house was in the middle of nowhere, and that was the first sign I should probably have not taken this job. But once I say yes to something, I usually feel committed to finish the job. So I headed out into the country and found this old house. I made my way around to the back where the entrance was to the basement. This was an ancient stone house, and I knew it probably had some stories to tell, but I really didn't understand what I was about to get into. I entered the basement and made my way down a long, damp hallway and passed through several rooms. They were mostly normal-looking rooms with crumbling wood stacked in the corner or various levels of junk. I made my way through one room and I could swear I heard something skittering or clawing in the walls, or maybe it was above me. But I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up. I held my ground listening, and the first thought was there's rats or raccoons somewhere in the house, and neither are a good thing because they carry rabies. And I, for one, don't want to get a bunch of shots in my stomach if one of these things would happen to latch onto my hand. After a bit, it seemed to go quiet, so I moved along. I'd finally made my way to the back room full of piles of old broken lumber and furniture and surveyed it, as it was the stuff I was supposed to carry out. It didn't look like a big job, but because of the long winding hallways I was going to have to move through, it was going to be a pain in the butt. As I was scanning the room, I heard another sound. It was a moaning of something that was begging for help or in pain. I looked up and there was a hole in the wall at the top, and that's where the sound was emanating from. This really sent a wave of fear into my stomach. The sound began to grow. I was frozen in place, not sure what to do. I looked around for anything else that looked out of place, and I saw nothing. And then I heard another yell of pain which echoed off the walls. This set off alarm bells inside of me. At that point, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to complete this job, and I wasn't going to stick around to find out what was making that noise. So I quickly turned around and rushed out of that basement. I looked back at the entryway, and I could swear I heard some scuffling footsteps heading my way. I turned and ran. I jumped in my car and sped away as fast as I could. This was the only job I ever bailed on, and I didn't even call back to let the guy know I wasn't going to come back and finish the job. No amount of money was worth going back in that basement. When you work in real estate, you get to see a lot of different houses, and some are perfectly fine with a little cleanup here and there, and some, when you go through them, give you an uneasy feeling. And this was one of those occasions. I'd been asked to go and give a quick appraisal on an old brick house that had basically been abandoned for many decades. And I reluctantly accepted the offer because I've always wondered what was inside that old house. So I made my way across town and arrived at the house, and it looked just like it looked for years. It had not been cared for for a long time, with only the basics being done to keep it from just falling down. I made my way inside, and the smell of mold and mildew hit me straight on. I could feel the dark history of the house in my bones. The floor creaked underneath my feet as I moved around, and my footsteps echoed off the plastered walls. It was like I was in a classic old haunted house that you dreaded as a kid. Somehow being there during the daylight didn't take much of this feeling away. But I had a job to do, so I began moving through the house, room by room. The place was basically empty, with paint peeling off the walls and old light fixtures dangling from the ceiling, looking down at me as I passed underneath them. I could feel a coldness reach into my body as I moved through the house. It was beyond that dampness that sometimes you run into, and this went straight to my core. I moved upstairs and was going to check out the bedrooms, and I entered one of the rooms. I looked around, and I saw that the door of the closet was shut. And then I went to check out one of the windows, and when I looked back, the door was open a crack. I had no idea how the door had come open, but I felt the tingles of fear grow inside me. I had to pass by that door to get out of the room, so I slowly approached the door, and I swear I could hear some whispering coming from inside that closet, and I wanted nothing to do with it, so I just moved as quick as possible and got out into the hallway. At this point, I was ready to leave, but there was only one more room to check out, so I said, I'm going to finish this job as quickly as possible. I made my way to the back bedroom and scanned around again. I saw another closet in the room, and the door was open a crack, and that fear I had earlier grew inside me. A drop of sweat ran down my back. Something was drawing me toward that closet. It was some unnatural force. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something else. But I crept up to that door. In the crack of the door, in the darkness, I could swear I saw something moving in there. I was almost ready to reach for the doorknob, and perhaps it was self-preservation that took over, but I bolted out of the room and ran down the stairs and out of that house. I was shaking a little bit as I stood far away from that house, and the feeling I felt inside me stayed for a long time, even after I'd driven away. I would later learn that a small child had died in one of the closets inside that house, and maybe that explained what I heard inside that closet and what I experienced that day. I would go on to wonder about it, but never enough to be willing to go back in that house again.